when Microsoft puts curbs on the use of LinkedIn when it operates in China, or Google, which helps the Chinese with their Dragonfly surveillance system effectively.
Well, I think we as a think tank, we try to observe evolution and trends from a neutral point of view, and to put this neutrality beyond the obvious perceptions that we might have, as some of us are Westerners, some of us are not, etc., and to observe the new lines of contention in the country. What we observe is that there's no longer anymore an obvious space, a neutral space. Every space is a space of rivalry, be it the internet, be it the industry of IT beyond the internet, or even the emoticons and etc., or the brands. So we live in a world where you have a lot of contention like that. Why? We have the assumption that it's because some of the perceptions are changing. So we've observed what the global South thinks of that. To get back to Taiwan, what we've observed also is that many countries in Africa have shifted from Taiwan to, or Taipei, to Beijing, not for reasons, for economic reasons and etc., but because the argument that some boundaries are either the direct or indirect result of colonial times or post-colonial times is an argument that strikes no chord in the West, but strikes a huge chord in the global South. So I think we're only at the beginning of those confrontation and discussions, and we would need to go beyond the little details, this emoticon, that tweet,
well,
or
what
whatever.
Google and Microsoft are doing,
and to have a serious
what Google and
discussion.
Microsoft are doing, that's not details. That's like
No, I know,
actively
but
helping the surveillance state.
I agree. There's an accumulation of things, but because we're only at the eve of a serious discussion. The serious discussion of the 21st century, or at least the first mid of the 21st century, is how we really overcome the post-colonial world that we have, with pros and cons, with and sometimes ugly.
And the question that Yao Chung Wang put at the end of part one of our discussion: who's winning the day? Is it China's economic might, or is it the West's soft power?
Well, soft power was first of all invented by America. Europeans are reluctant about using the term of soft power. Europeans, when they could, when they had the might, they used hard power.
People love our channel because they want to hear about France, and they know.
I know
that's soft power. They go to the Louvre,
but they don't claim that. They don't claim that to be soft power. In France, we are reluctant to call it soft power.
I'm claiming it as soft power. I mean, it's culture, Le Louvre, and everything. It's soft power. And you see, you remember when Notre Dame was in fire?
I know.
All over the world, it was everywhere.
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
This is soft power.
It's hard. It's not necessarily power.
Amazonia was burning.
The concepts, concepts are never for granted. Is it soft? Is it power?
Yeah, whatever.
Europeans talk about culture. Americans talk about soft power. Chinese talk about something else.
What is China talking about, by the way? Because there is no soft power in China.
They're talking about civilization.
Well,
whether we like it or not, it's a fact. The different parts of the world don't speak the same language, and we're just realizing this today. Of course, this brings frictions and tensions, and that's irrespective of the regimes, of the systems, or of the society. There's a need to reopen the concepts we thought to be, we took for granted.
Most people, they don't fly in a plane. They don't pay attention to whether or not Taiwan is on the map or it's called Taipei, do they?
Me, I do pay attention when I try to check on airline. I do see that there are changes, and I have many Taiwan friends. And on this recent issue of what's happening in Hong Kong, we feel truly very much Taiwan and Hong Kong are really on the same fate. So or on the same unity of counteracting the same force or same threat that we are facing. So back to the soft power thing, I think it's no matter you call it culture or soft power. I think now it's in the era that different powers, including the rising Chinese power or the United States, the established power, they are using this kind of soft power or culture, whatever you call, to guard their values. But whether China is able but I would say that you mentioned the African countries. They are trying to do business with China in order to counteract the post-colonialism. But that's how we see China is taking this chance to export its own kind of soft power through this kind of economic collaboration.
Yeah, and there's aspects that we all embrace in the West of Chinese civilization that we too like to eat, like the cuisine, and and are discovering the culture more and more. There is, though, this issue, though, still about how much pressure is being brought to, well, keep the liberal order that we've known up to now in the West the way it is. Donald Trump himself, who's going to be meeting on Thursday with Chinese counterparts to talk about trade, he's been quiet when it comes to Hong Kong. His administration, though, has been more vocal. In a separate story, we learned on Monday 28 Chinese entities, including 8 companies working on artificial intelligence, have been added to a U.S. blacklist over the crackdown on Uyghur Muslims in the western Xinjiang province. And I got to ask you, Doran Malovic, is that about defending human rights, or is this part of that grand bargain over trade?
I think it's small gestures. Actually, it's not a huge pressure. I mean, it's really symbolic. I think the 28 entities, it might be important as such, but you have thousands. You have thousands, and you have the banks, and you have other big companies all over the world, Chinese companies. So it's just like that make me remember about some companies, from North Korea. I mean, it was very symbolic. I mean, you can always go around those sanctions. I mean, it's not so important. I mean,
we're running short on time, and since you are just back from Hong Kong, let's talk about what's going on there. Each new week seems to somehow raise the stakes in a 4-month standoff. Police say the number of arrests for defying a new face mask ban has reached 77. Colonial-era emergency laws went into effect Saturday. The protests continue unabated. The territory's chief executive says it takes time for measures there to work, and if they don't, well, there's always the threat of intervention from the mainland.
At this point in time, I still strongly feel that we should find the solutions ourselves. That is also the position of the central government, that Hong Kong should tackle the problem on her own. Okay? But if the situation becomes so bad, then no options could be ruled out if we want Hong Kong to at least to have another chance.
No options can be ruled out. In other words, perhaps intervention from the mainland.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I'm just back from there for 2 weeks, and now what I realized, I mean, talking with dozens of people and marching every day, evening, MTR closed, shopping malls, shops, banks, and the violence on both sides. I mean, it started now 4 months ago. It started with this anti-extradition bill. It was really anger from the Hong Kongese, right? Anger. And then there were 2 million and 1 million demonstration people in June. And then in July, August, this anger just went as a rage against the police brutality. I remember last time I talked about that, and it's really a reality. We don't see much on the screen in Europe, actually. And this rage is now becoming hatred against this police. Really, because we don't see the brutality. Every day you have people arrested. Yesterday you had a couple with a kid arrested in the night by the police. A pregnant woman was arrested, and she's now in hospital, guarded by the police. And every day you have that kind of violence, and there is immunity. I mean, they can do whatever they want. And the way Carrie Lam is speaking, said, we have to solve the problem. She's not talking about the problem the demonstrators are talking. She's talking about problem of demonstrations. So the only way for her to quell the demonstration is more and more repression. And the Hong Kongers are really answering. It was Hong Kong courage. Now it's Hong Kong resist. Hong Kong go. We have to answer. So it's becoming more and more violent.
Citizens of Hong Kong are pragmatic, though. We saw with the umbrella movement that after a while they had to get back to work.
I mean, the Hong Kongers of 2014 are not the Hong Kongers of 2019. I mean, I don't know what you think about it. It's totally different. I mean, in June, it was already some kind of joy. It started like a dream. We can do something about this law of extradition. And then you have 6 demands now. It's not only one demand, like in June.
Because it had been 5, now it's become 6.
It's 6 because they ask for the dissolution of the police force.
Right.
Because it's now just unbearable
Honestly
for them.
speaking, Rico Leung, do you really expect Beijing to acquiesce on all 6 demands? What are you actually hoping for, expecting?
So I think it's all related to what we have discussed this evening. It's about Hong Kong is now actually we are fighting to got our own freedom, fundamental human rights, but we are also at the front line of this expansion of Chinese authoritarian rule. So I think we have to fight on no matter how much possibility or that the Communist Party would really agree on these demands of us. And
is there a way that it can de-escalate, that there can be some kind of a real dialogue established between Hong Kongers and Beijing?
I'm sure many Hong Kong people, they also want peace and stability. They also want to go home and rest. No one would like to protest every weekend. It is very exhausting for the whole population, no matter the protesters or even the police side or the pro-government side. But I think the problem is the government never respond to any of our requests, like except the withdrawal of the bill, which came too late. And so that's and now they are trying to enact the emergency law, bypassing the whole legislative process, which is a serious blow to the rule of law and judicial independence of Hong Kong, which is something Hong Kong stands firm very much with, and which is the core value of Hong Kong. So I think there is not much choice for the Hong Kong people right now.
Hong Kong's clout has diminished, obviously, since the British handed it over. Nonetheless, we see the numbers. Foreign investors prefer doing their IPOs there rather than in Shanghai. So, Joël Ruet, at this point in time, what future for Hong Kong?
Well, I think what will be key is the role of the police. I think this 6th demand is very important to analyze, because in every country, remember the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu labeled the police as the legal violence. In Hong Kong had been a peaceful territory, so the police was not trained, was under-trained to violence. They were not equipped to handle that. Therefore, the reactions that got triggered by initial movements, etc., in a sense, kind of spilled over. And somehow the police is very central to the issue today, not just the global politics. So it might be also very central into the solution. Back to your question on investments. Well, you know, what we should not underestimate also is that, frankly speaking, the economic model of Hong Kong had gone down over the years. There was
still the world's 3rd financial center.
Well, yeah, but it's mostly used by Chinese companies for refinancing the Chinese mainland. You don't see many new technologies being developed that. You don't see many new companies coming to develop their Pan-Asian or Pacific area. Why? Because the leadership had failed to propose something that would go into the future. You still have till today a kind of oligarchy of rich people who control, who have kind of compromised with the system, which is maybe good for stability, but not good for giving new prospects for. So the Hong Kong model at the heart, even before the protest, was at risk.